Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dream Data.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dream Data employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations.
social selling maybe. Hello and welcome everybody to today's live attributed session brought to you by us here at Dream Data. As usual, my name is Stefan. I'm the CMO and co-founder of Dream Data. I'm really glad to have you with us here today. But what makes me even more glad today is that we have the great honor of having what you could probably call a true B2B marketing legend by now. April is a best-selling author now, and probably the leading expert in the world, which you've also done really well at positioning yourself as. So kudos for that, April. But I'm really happy that you've said yes to spend a little time with us here today, talking about your new version of the obviously awesome book, which I can truly testify was obviously awesome as I read it the first time. So I'm really excited to hear today kind of why was it time to make a new book of something that was already pretty good. But April, before we kind of dive into all these this geeky stuff about positioning and so forth, there might be a few people who have not heard about your name and I don't know all the work that you've done. And like, how would you kind of present what it is that you do today to those people?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I'm a consultant these days. Like I spent the first part of my career in-house as a kind of a repeat vice president of marketing at startups. And then for the last, it's been 11, 12 years now, I've been consulting and I've got a very narrow area of expertise. So what I do is positioning um, specifically for tech companies only. And even more specifically, it's B2B tech companies that do more complicated sort of enterprise type stuff. So companies with a sales team, essentially. Like if you're selling $100 thing, zero touch off the website, I don't do those. But if you sell a bigger thing and you have a salesperson somewhere in your sales process, I work with those. So I've been doing this 11, 12 years now. I probably worked with a little over 300 companies. And yeah, it's pretty fun.
And there's almost like a positioning lesson in just listening to how descriptive you're able to go with saying what it is that you do, because so many companies out there are not able to say, I do this for this specific type of people. And like, actually, it's not only these people, it's even more specific. It's just these particular people. And it's such a pleasure to hear how well thought out everything looks nowadays.
Well, I have to like, I'm really conscious about staying in my box. I feel quite strongly that, positioning for a consumer product versus a B2B product is actually quite different. And so,
Interesting.
if I tried to spread myself across both of those, like all my background is B2B, all my stuff is based on B2B, B2C, what little I know about it, which is not very much, looks really different to me in terms of what you can get away with in positioning and what you can't. And so I just stay away from it because I don't, I know what I can do for a company if you're B2B. If you're B2C, I don't really know. And I don't want to find out. There's lots of business over here. I don't have to go to places where I'm unsure whether we could drive the impact I think we can. And then the same thing with, big ticket things versus small ticket things. Like a lot of the companies I work with have a product-led growth motion somewhere. Like, they have something a free trial or something you can get for very low price on the website. But everybody that I work with has a sales team somewhere. Either they come in over top and do a deal, or that, once the thing gets bigger, then a sales team gets involved. Again, all my background in 25 years of working in-house was all looked like that.
Yeah.
So, for me to go and say, hey, now I'm going to go position consulting companies, or I'm going to go position, toothpaste, like that, I don't think I would be honest with myself about what I'm good at and what I'm not. Here's the other thing, like all good positioning, you get really narrow on something, then you
Mm,
get really, really good at it, and
yeah.
everything just compounds and compounds. And so if a company comes to me and they're B2B, a tech company with a sales team, doing a certain amount of revenue, I feel very confident that you're gonna get way more than your money's worth to come and work with me. If I was outside of that box, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I love that. Really,
Let's don't go
yeah.
there.
But I would love to maybe just like jump straight on that kind of like staying in your lane as a
Yeah,
company, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the LinkedIn feed, the podcast, the conferences, where all the buzzwords flying around. You have
yeah,
board members, you have investors that say, "Hey, what about this new technology? Can't you say that you do a little bit of that? And
right.
what about this new AI thing? Shouldn't we be saying that we're doing some of that as well?"
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit in depth about kind of just the value of staying in your lane?
Yeah,
Because I think marketing theoretical, it really makes sense because you want to occupy a certain space in people's brain, and if you keep saying a new thing every quarter, then I
right.
suspect that you lose that
How does anybody
occupation
know
of
what
it.
you are?
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes a long time for a position to actually get established in the market. Like, it takes a long time to get known for something. Like, it doesn't happen in a quarter. Like, if you shift your positioning, you're gonna have to it takes, quarter after quarter saying the same thing over and over and over again until everybody on the team is sick of it, and that's just when it starts working in the market. Here's the thing, like, this was part of my original frustration when I was thinking about a methodology for doing positioning. If we're just positioning based on vibes, how do we know when we have to change?
Vibe positioning, that's maybe the new term.
Yeah. Oh, you would, and a lot of that gets done. Like, now sometimes you got a thing in the market and the positioning just ain't that complicated. Like, it's kind of obvious what it is. You can look at the competitors, you can look at what you do. You say, look, obviously the thing we do that's different is this. So obviously these kind of people are going to like it. Obviously, we're going to position it in this way. And lots of companies do that at the beginning, but then things change, right? So I've got new competitors coming into this space. My product has changed, their product has changed. They've caught up to me in some ways. I pulled away from them in other ways. I've got all this stuff happening in the market at large, like, everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about some other thing that's happening. If I just position based on, hey, this is my gut feel and it seems obvious this is what we should be doing, then how do you know you got to switch? If I have a methodology, on the other hand, where I said, look, the how we came up with this was we went through a series of steps. We looked at, if I didn't exist, what would a customer do? Meaning, what's a customer got to stop doing in order to use my stuff? So what's the status quo? And who lands on my short list? And then I can look, if I really understand that, not who could be on my short list, who should be on my short list, but who actually lands on a customer's short list and a customer would seriously consider switching. Your sales team knows that. You can see that from your deals. I have that stake in the ground. And then I can say, well, what have I got that's different? And I know what the differences are between me and the other folks that a customer might choose. And then I can translate that into value. And that value determines who I should be selling to because I can look at, well, who cares a lot about that value? If I run through that process, now I know how I got to what my positioning is. So if the board or somebody comes up and says, well, hang on a second, everybody's talking about vibe coding. Why aren't you positioning against vibe coding? Because can't they just vibe code the thing that you have? The real question should be, are your customers considering vibe coding? Meaning, is it a real alternative in the
Yeah.
mind of your customers? And if the answer is no, then you don't have to worry about it. I mean, you might have to worry about it in the future. I'm not saying you never have to worry about it. I'm not saying your product team might be building something to make sure that you don't get vibe coded out of existence 5 years from now. But at this particular point in time, from a marketing sales standpoint, I don't have to position against a ghost, man. If my
Yeah.
customers aren't seriously considering it, I don't have to position against it. But it also means that I have to keep my finger on that. It means I gotta check in on that quarterly. Like, that's true now. Is it true next quarter? Is it true the quarter after? And are we ready to react to that when it does start happening? That's a whole separate question.
I
And
love.
we may have a vision that gets us to a point where we're absolutely gonna bump into vibe coding, and we know we are.
Mm.
And so we're building a product for that. But that's completely separate from the messaging I'm going out with right now for to position myself against alternatives that customers would consider right now.
Yeah, it's like we're actually in the middle of going through like a positioning kind of refresher right now myself, and it got me thinking about how frequently should you do this? Is it like
Yeah.
a once a year exercise? Is it like quarterly, as you say? Because it's also resource intense if you want to do it thoroughly, like listen through all the calls that your sales team has been doing, involving all the C levels in this work. So I don't know, like
Well,
I kind of
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on that.
yeah,
So when I was in-house and we did this, we didn't do it quarterly, we did it every 6 months. And at that time for the products I was in, that was good enough. I mean, it was all enterprise software. Stuff wasn't moving that fast. Well, I don't know. Right now, depending on the spot I was in, I might be doing it quarterly. But that quarterly check-in, who I have in that check-in is I've got my head of product, my head of sales, my head of marketing, and I've got the CEO. So we're all together. Like, I don't necessarily need to go back and listen to the gong calls of every single gong call that we ever had to find out, is competitor X showing up on the list? Like, if I got a good head of sales with their finger on that, they'll know because that's their job. So if I've got them in there, like, and usually if a new competitor starts popping up, your head of sales is freaking out.
yeah,
Most
uh,
of the time, you're just not asking them that question. So they could be freaking out for 6 months, and then all of a sudden you start losing deals to that competitor,
mhm,
red alert problem, and the salesperson every time this has happened to me, salesperson comes in and says, "I knew it. It's been going on for months." And you're like, "Dude, we need to know."
yeah,
By putting this formal thing on the calendar, and when I did this check-in, it's a 2-hour meeting.
yeah,
Everybody together, and we're like, "Okay, competitors, has anything changed?" And I'm looking at the head of sales. "Is anything different?" And they might say, "You know what? We've seen a little bit of this. They're not causing us any pain now, but they're starting to show up on the short list. Then, okay, then we need to go and redo the exercise."
yeah,
But if the head of sales comes in and says, "Nah, it's the same people as always, same stuff as always," then I
yeah,
go to the head of product and I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about product. Are our differentiated capabilities still differentiated?" Meaning, are the things that we said that we could do that the other guys couldn't, is that still true? Or have they caught up to us in any
yeah,
way? And therefore it's not differentiating anymore. Therefore, our differentiated value is maybe changed. Oh, now we got to go back and relook at the positioning. But
yeah,
if the head of product says, nah, kind of pretty much same old, same old. And then same thing, maybe put out a new release, and you got some new stuff. The question is, okay, we have this new stuff. Does it strengthen the existing value props, or does it actually unlock some new value that might even potentially enable us to go after a new customer? Well, now we got to redo the exercise.
yeah,
But 9 times out of 10, I go into that meeting, we just did the positioning 6 months ago. We get everybody together and we're like, "Anything changed on competitors? No. Anything changed on differential capabilities? No. Anything changed on value? No. Okay, good. See you in 6 months." That's it.
mm,
2 hours. And so now, sometimes, like, I can give you examples where I had products
yes,
and we went through that thing every year for like 3, 4 years and nothing changed, and we just kept sticking the same positioning and everything worked. I've had some where I had one where we had this great positioning and we had a strategic partnership with a company, and that worked really well, and we were very happy with it, but 4 months later, the company got acquired by
mm,
another company, and we're like, "Oh, rats." So we had to get everybody back together and do an adjustment on the positioning, and that worked great for like 8 months, and then that company, which was a huge company, by the way, got acquired by a mega company, and not only that, the mega company was like, "We're just gonna shut all that shit down," and they were like, "Oh, no." So then we had to go in and do it again. So
mm,
we had 3 really big shifts in positioning in, like, a year and a half. So that was one case, but we couldn't have predicted any of that. Like, none of that we could have known in advance. And I have another product that I could point you to. The very first product I ever worked on as a product marketer, we did a repositioning of that thing. And that thing up until last year was still in market. And we're talking 25 years or something. Still
Yeah.
in market, still selling. And if you looked at that page, the positioning was not that different. A little bit different wording. We were talking about mobile devices. They were talking about Internet of Things, but basically the same idea, same value prop, same stuff. And that was decades. So how do we know when it's going to change? We don't.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good answer, April. And I think the first time around you do it, you're guaranteed that it's gonna be a lot of work because you haven't actually gotten
Yes.
the team around to think about these things thoroughly. But then I do get it that it's follow the market, follow what the prospects are saying. If nothing changes, you can stay in your lane.
Yeah.
If new competition appear, then like obviously you need to talk about these things.
Well, and here's the thing. We need to separate positioning from product strategy. Those are separate things.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So think about it this way. I may have a product strategy that says, look, in 2 years, we're going to be this big and I'm going to make an acquisition. And when I make that acquisition, we are going to be a whole different company doing a whole different thing with a whole different value proposition. Right. And I may have a vision that says, hey, today we're just this, but in the next 10 years, we're going to go through this set of stages and we're going to build this. We're going to add this new thing. At this point, we'll make an acquisition, maybe blah, blah, blah. And then I got some vision thing, and that's the 10-year, 5-year thing. It's way out there. That might be what I sold to the VCs. I might go to the VCs and say, look, this thing doesn't look so interesting now, but trust me,
Yeah.
we're on a path to
Yeah.
get to this other thing, which is amazing, but we can't do it all at once. And here's the deal. I got a product strategy that says, first we're this, then we're this, then we're this, eventually we're this, and then we become this all singing, all dancing thing. At
Yeah.
every step in that journey, there's a different positioning.
Mm.
So if I'm sitting there positioning and saying, look, like nobody compares me to competitor X, so I don't have to worry about them and I'm doing that. That doesn't mean that I don't have a strategy to go take them out. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I don't have a strategy that 3 years from now, I am going to be positioned directly across from them because I think I can beat them at that point.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. And I think this is where people get confused is they say, well, I can't not position against vibe coding. They're going to come get us eventually.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if you believe that, then you need a product strategy that gets you to a point where you can compete against them when that eventually turns into right now. But there is no point in talking to a customer about how you're better than vibe coding when they're not even thinking about vibe coding. Right?
It's so good,
We
April.
gotta tease these two things apart. I think getting them confused is where a lot of mushy bad positioning comes in, where the customer's coming in and they're looking at you and two competitors that look just like you, and you are not succinctly answering the question, why us versus those two other ones? Because sure, we're so worried about a competitor that isn't even on the list.
I really that I can tell you a lot of investors we've spoken to use the short-term positioning. What is like as kind of they're asking for positioning, but they're asking for like a 3 to
They
5
want the
year
vision.
vision of where we're going, and they call it positioning, and it confuses everybody on the ground because
Yeah,
we're in the war fields every single day, having to, as you say, exactly what are our customers saying, what is our
right,
prospects considering right now,
right.
and they're not caring about that feature that you
They
don't
don't.
have, and you need to raise money to have a product team that can actually deliver
That's
the
right.
feature.
And so that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So when you go into VC, and a good VC understands the difference, right?
Yeah.
But when you go in, but you can't have like you've got to have a really inspiring vision that says, look, like we're small now, but
Yeah.
we're going to be 200, 300, 400 million revenue in 10 years. And here's how we're going to do it. We're not doing it doing the thing we're doing right now, man.
Yeah.
We're doing it doing this other thing. And that's why we need the cash.
Mhm.
Because we're on a journey. Do you want to be with us on this journey or not? But I
Have
think
you
it's
like
hard.
among
Like if you haven't raised a lot of money,
yeah.
or even when you're in the middle of fundraising, I think it's difficult for the senior team that's involved in fundraising to separate out the feedback they're getting from VCs
Yep.
from the feedback they're getting from customers.
Yes.
These are actually two separate things, and you got to be really careful that your VC pitch doesn't ruin your sales pitch,
Mm,
versa.
yeah.
They're different
That,
pitches fundamentally,
I can, from first-hand experience, verify that that can be very confusing, particularly when you're a young company and
for
the VC.
sure.
Oh, I love that, April. Super, super good.
People call me all the time and they're like, "Hey, bro, can you help us with our VC pitch?" And I'm like, "No, you
No,
cannot."
that's not what I do. Yeah,
That's a totally different thing, and there's a certain amount of alchemy to it, right?
yeah,
And it's based on where you think you can go on this thing. My stuff is all about how do we win deals right now, man.
yeah.
Like, all we're trying to do is stay alive to work on that vision. We just need to close deals today with the product we have today against the competitors we have today, and let's just figure that out.
Mhm.
And but meanwhile, behind the scenes, we have all this other action, which is here's the vision, here's the strategy that gets us there. Here's all the stuff we have to do. Here's the steps we're going to take. But these things are separate.
Before we jump out of this chapter, maybe you can just kind of reflect and what have kind of been good practical advice to kind of get boards and investors to kind of buy into this understanding that we have to do something very tactical today, and then it's great that you want the vision over here at some point.
Yeah. So we've done it in lots of different ways in the companies where I worked back when I was in house. The first company I ever worked at, we were selling this thing. One of the first startups I worked at where we're raising money and had this thing. Um, I'll give you two examples. So there was one where we had the cash cow product that was clearly in decline. And Microsoft was eating
Yeah.
our lunch. It was very bad. So we had this product that was very successful. It was kind of flatlining, and we knew the future was bad and it was going to go down. And
Mm,
we had the second product that was brand new that we had just started selling. So when we came in and positioned the company to the VCs, we said, look, like, here's what the revenue looks like and here's what the growth looks like. But there are
mm,
two stories here.
yeah.
There's one story about this product and there's one story about this product. And we actually had to tease the numbers out and explain to them that what you are investing in is not this
But that
product
is working
A,
well right now, but
right?
yeah.
It's this. And that's a very hard story to pitch because product A is making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at us like we're a company that has 40 million revenue in
Mm,
this case, but in fact, they're investing in us like a company that has 5
yeah.
because the only product that matters is the second thing and it's only doing 5.
Mm,
But the growth potential for that product was huge.
yeah.
And so we had to be very careful about that and do that. So that's one example. Second one is, I worked at a company and we were selling a CRM products specifically to investment banks. But the vision was that we weren't just going to sell to investment banks forever. The vision was we were going to go from investment banks. We were doing the investment banking
Yeah.
group inside of investment bank.
Yeah.
Then we were going to get the other groups inside the investment bank, like research, private client services. And then we were going to move into retail banking because a lot of these investment banks have retail arms. So we had a plan for that.
Yeah.
And then after we got into that, then we were going to get into insurance. So if you looked at the addressable market, for investment banking, it didn't look all that big. But if you added retail, much bigger, and then you added insurance, massive, right? This is all of financial services now.
Yeah.
So we drew that. We were big. This is back a while. We were big into Clayton Christensen, or no, sorry. We were big into Jeffrey Moore. So we were like crossing the chasm. And there's a chapter in Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, where he draws this bowling pins, and he talks about adoption of new technology or how you successfully expand in a market.
Yeah.
And he talks about bowling pin strategy. So we literally, in all our investor pitches, drew the pins and said, look, the lead pin is investment banking. And
Yeah.
once we knock that over, that gets us into the other groups. And once we knock those over, that gets us into retail. And once we knock those over, that gets us into insurance. So we would draw the pins
Yeah. Yeah.
And we would have this conversation, and that was our way of saying, look, like you're going to go on the website and all you're going to see is this thing, but the strategy is to use this thing to get us to these things. Once we have these things, we get to these things. Once we have these things, we get to these things, and
Yeah.
then it's huge business, and that's why you should write us the check.
And
Um,
that keeps them in place because then now they have kind of a roadmap of, okay, from the tactical to the visionary part of,
that's it.
things that
So
make
so that is the key thing. You need to show them the roadmap that separates out where you are today from where you expect to be
yeah,
in 10 years, and here's the practical steps we're gonna take to get from here to there.
yeah, love
And
that.
then they gotta believe that.
Yeah. April, if we change chapter, so to speak, a little bit. So I just briefly mentioned, obviously, Awesome sold more than 100,000 books, which is a fantastic accomplishment.
Ridiculous.
Probably even unexpected for yourself when you started. And you've done more. I think you said like 200 projects since the book came out. So why did you like what did you learn since 2019 that made you wanna kind of go back to this already the book that is already doing quite well?
Yeah. So many reasons. So, normally when you put out a book, you don't get a chance to get a do-over on it because normally the way books work, you release it, it sells for a while, and then, people are on to other books and it trails off, and then that's it. And there's no point going back to revisit it. It's done. You already said what you had to say, and it's done, and people are talking about other things now. This one, to my surprise, for whatever reason, it still sells. I'm still selling a lot of books. And I think positioning is a bit of an evergreen topic. It's not something that changes when technology changes or the way customers buy changes. Like, we've been doing positioning since the 80s, and
Mhm.
it's been the same since then. And
Yeah.
so my book being kind of a how-to on that, like how do you actually get positioning done? I don't think the fundamental concepts change that much. So if you think you have problems with positioning, then I think my book is, a good reference
Yeah.
in a world of decent references on that stuff. So the book was still selling well, and, like you say, I, had worked with 50, 60 companies at the time that I wrote that book, and then it's been 7 years or so, and I've worked with another few hundred companies after that. So there were some patterns that I started to see that I didn't see at the time that I wrote the book, that particularly in terms of where companies get stuck in the process and why they get stuck, like what the
Yeah.
root causes of those things are. Like, so for
Mm.
example, um, differentiated value is a really key concept in the book. Like this idea of trying to get at what is the value that you can deliver for customers that nobody else can is a really important concept. And I didn't s and not only is it really important, it's complicated. Like it's hard to get your head around. It's hard to
It's
do really well.
I've so struggled with it so many times because it's like, but we have this feature and it's nice, but the competitors have the exact same feature, so it's not a
So who
differentiated
cares?
value
Like,
part. Yeah.
like there's a difference between saying, we have this value, but that's nice, but that's not the question the customer is asking. The customer's not asking why you. They're asking why you over the other guys. Because if it's again, if it's B2B and it's enterprise, they're not just looking at you. They're looking at you and 3 other people plus the thing they're doing right now and saying, "Is this worth it? Like, should I pick this over all the other things I could do?" So this concept of differentiate value, tricky.
Yes.
Um, and the way I wrote it up in the original book was, I don't know, 3 pages. Like, it was not
Yeah.
nearly enough detail. So people are calling me and they're like, "Dude, I'm doing this thing on my own, but we're really stuck." And they're always stuck in the same spot, which is this differentiated values. But it's other spots too, but that one in
Yeah.
particular,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I was like, "Man, that chapter should have been way longer." And there's a whole bunch more I could say about watch
Wonderful.
out for this and don't worry about this. And here's a way to think about it. So I greatly expanded that chapter. Um, there are other things in terms, so there were a set of things that I started to see as patterns that I didn't see as patterns when I wrote the first book that I wanted to address in the book. So that was one thing. Second thing was I started working with bigger companies,
Okay.
and obviously I'd worked with some big companies before I wrote the first edition of the book, but when I had a reader in mind, I was thinking about, which back then would have been a Series A, Series B startup.
Yeah.
Most of them would have one product, maybe a product and an add-on or something, but I wasn't really thinking about a Google or an IBM where you have
No.
multiple things and there's
Yeah.
layers of things and divisions and, how do you think about positioning an individual product versus a suite versus a platform and
Yeah.
things like that. But since the book has come out, I've done a lot more work with companies that are bigger and struggling with exactly that.
Yeah,
And
and they have a much more
similar
complex landscape to deal with than like a single product
exactly.
company, right? Yeah.
And a lot of companies doing like, shortly after COVID, like 2021, 2022 was just a wave of companies doing acquisitions, like so many acquisitions.
Yeah.
And so this idea of I was a single product company, but then I did this acquisition and how do we deal with that? Like, is that
Mm.
separate things? Should it be two separate things? If I want to, should it be a lead product and that thing becomes an add-on? Does that thing get absorbed and it's actually just a feature? So there's all these questions. And I thought, well, that would be a
Yes.
good section to add in the book as well. So
Yeah.
some of these things that apply to, you've got a little bit more complexity than just one product, and therefore the company positioning, the product positioning is essentially the same. So I wanted to add that. And then there were some other just kind of structural things to just make the process easier for people. There were a couple of things that I just plain wrote badly, where I get about an email a week from someone and they'd say, "Hey, look, I'm on page 120 whatever, and you said this thing," and I'm just like, "Oh, man." Like,
Yeah. Wish I wrote something else.
and I gotta write it back, say, "I know I said that, buddy, but what I
Yeah.
meant was this." And so I thought, "I'm gonna go back in there and I'm gonna fix that. I'm never gonna get that email again," although I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm gonna get different emails, but so far so good,
Yeah. And
particularly on that one. I stopped
one of
so
the
I
things
thought,
you also mentioned is kind of the pre-work to positioning.
"Oh, so this was the thing that, I'm dealing with tech people, right?"
Yeah.
And so a lot of people reading the book are on a product side or they're CEOs, and the CEOs generally have come out of the product side. And the fact that I had 5 component pieces of positioning, but there were 10 steps, those numbers were not the same,
Yeah.
that really bugged people a lot. Like, I get it a lot. They're like, "Wait, there's 5 why isn't there 5 steps? It's 5 components, why is there not 5 steps?" And at first I thought, "Dude, because they're just not." Like,
Yeah.
they don't have to
Sorry.
be the same. But then the more I got thinking about it, the more I was like, You know what? All the things that happen before you get to the components part are really kind of things you do before a positioning exercise. So there's a bunch of key decisions you have to make, like what exactly are we going to position? Like if we're multiple products, like are we positioning a single product? Are we positioning a platform? Are we positioning the company? So there's decisions like that you have to make. You have to make decisions around like, is now the right time to do it? Do we have enough customer experience to actually do this? Do
Yeah.
we understand the persona that we're trying to go after? There's all these things that are decisions you make before you even assemble the team.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of things once you've made those decisions, there's a bunch of things you do to get prepared for a positioning exercise. Like I got to figure out who's the right people to have in the room and I've got to make some decisions about that and I should probably give those people a little bit of background on what the exercise is and why we're doing it. We should we should probably think about enabling them for success, which is maybe have a conversation around, hey, like we've always thought of ourselves as a CRM, but maybe we're not a CRM and maybe this is changing and maybe we can take that positioning baggage and set it aside and come into this with pure. So there's a bunch of things you want to do as setup.
I
And
think
then
that caught us by surprise this year, how much like gathering of intelligence, like widely speaking, that you need to do before you can have people actually work on positioning,
hmm,
like analyzing all the gong calls, like figuring out or sorry, talking with your CS people about who's the most successful customers, talking with
right.
the sales team, who do you like to win deals from. So I think that to some degree, like getting the leadership team together is the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And there's so much work in just getting the status quo right for what your company is doing today and what your customers think. And what are the alternatives to you, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, again, yes and no. Like sometimes I think, I don't know how to put this. Like sometimes I think that we can skip a lot of deep analysis on this stuff by trusting that the people that own these functions know what's going on at a
Mm.
macro level. Because not all of this stuff is actually data. It's more like we can look at the data and the data might tell us something, but what we need is the insight on the data, which generally comes from your people, right? So if you're
Yeah.
asking a question like, if I go to CS and try to figure out who's more successful and less successful, like if you had to ask your head of CS, like in general, what kind of customers are more successful versus less successful, they've got an opinion about that.
Yeah.
And their opinion is probably correct. It's
Yeah.
good to have the data. Like I would never say, don't go and splunk through the data and figure
Yeah.
it out. But at the same time, if I have two experienced salespeople plus their boss in the room and they've closed a lot of deals,
Mm.
if I ask the question, well, who usually comes up on a short list?
Yeah.
The answer I get there is generally pretty right.
They
Now,
know. Yeah.
they know, right? They know. And part of the reason they know is because the answer is not 1,000 companies, it's 2.
Yeah.
And companies will come to me and they'll say, "No, no, no, you don't understand, like, there's 50." And they'll give me the list of 50. When you go talk to sales, it's not true.
Yeah.
Sales says, "Yeah, okay, we saw them in that one big deal and everyone cried when we lost it, but to be honest, it wasn't a good fit for us anyways. We should have never been in that deal, and the fact that we were bumping up against that competitor told us that it was not a good fit deal." You know, it's that kind of stuff. So, in my opinion, you don't necessarily have to do and this is caveated with, it's B2B, I have a sales team, I have a support team, like, I have human beings that are
Yeah.
interacting with like, if you were a completely zero touch sales model, then you'd have no way to know any of this stuff without going and getting the data, interviewing a whole bunch of customers, figuring out what's going on.
Yeah.
But if I've got a sales team and a service team and there's a lot of interaction with customers, we do know a lot about what goes on there. It, you know, again, it's not gonna be perfect. It's gonna be a little bit biased and all that stuff. And so this is why I don't want one person in the room. I want 2 or 3 to balance that out,
Yeah.
particularly on the sales side. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this big thing where, we gotta go listen to every gong call.
Yeah.
You know what I think is cool too is like Gong is getting better and better at enabling us to pull out things from those gong calls without actually sitting down and listening to all the gong calls,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely.
so we can look at that. We can pull data from Gong that says, we can set stuff up that says, look, I want to know every time this company gets mentioned or that company gets mentioned, or if their new company starts getting mentioned, I want it to throw me an alert and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So 2 practical questions. How long should a positioning process take?
Mm.
Is it a week you can spend on it? Is it a month? Is it a quarter?
Well,
How much time?
here's the thing, like, you're gonna wanna do a little prep beforehand, and it depends on how contentious that prep is.
Yeah.
So, for example, I had a company come to me, and they
Yeah.
said, "We want a position." It's a big, big company, and they had recently done some acquisitions, and these acquisitions were all in the same division, and they said, "You know what? We need a pitch that covers everything that's in this division now because we want our reps to be able to tell the story of all the things
Yes.
in the division."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." But we had a second call with the head of sales, and the head of sales says, "Well, do we really? Because I don't think that's the way we're gonna sell it."
Yeah.
Aha. So then we're having a discussion about, well, how do we wanna sell it? And so the rep or the VP sales said, "We got this product, and that should be the lead product. And then we have these other things, and they're just add-ons to the lead product. Really, I wouldn't try to sell the other things at the same time as the lead product because it complicate the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the deal would get bigger, but I might not win the deal. It'd be way better if I just land the deal with the first thing. And then once
Mm.
we've landed the deal, then we come back in and said, "Hey, you can expand this with this, this, this," and then that would be an expansion. And the
Yeah.
company had not really made the decisions around this go-to-market strategy yet. So if you say, well, so then they went away and then so this opened this can of worms. What exactly are we positioning? And I said, look, like we shouldn't do this thing until you guys figure that out. And it took them 2 months to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
that out. So they went away for 2 months and then they came back and said, "Yo, we're definitely doing the lead product plus the other things." And so when we did do the exercise, it wasn't an exercise to position all the things. It was an exercise to position the lead thing. And then a couple months later, I came back in and we did an exercise to position the add-on cross-sell, upsell things that would go in and sell afterwards.
I love that.
So
Maybe.
so when you say how long does the positioning thing take? Well, there's decisions to be made up front, and these might take longer than you think. Like if you already
Yes.
know the answers, then it only takes a minute. But if you don't know
Mm.
the answers, then it might take a couple months. Then there's the actual positioning exercise itself. And I mean, I do these with my clients and we do them in a week. Like, we're in and out in a
Yeah.
few days.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that, but then that's just the start, right? Then you actually got to go make the positioning real out in the market, which is a huge effort that
Yes.
happens after the actual positioning workshop. Then it's, okay, we gotta build a new sales deck. We have to test that new sales deck. Then we have to roll that new sales deck out to the whole sales team. Then I gotta take the positioning and I gotta turn it into messaging. Then I
Mm.
gotta test that messaging and make sure it works. And then I gotta roll that out across everything I'm doing in marketing. Then I gotta have the whole thing sorta hit the market and stick.
Mm.
Like, that's a few months, man. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so people come and
Absolutely.
they say, "Well, how long does it take?" And I'm like, "Well, a little bit with me takes a few days, but that ain't the whole thing."
Totally. That makes so much sense, people.
So, the team has gotta commit to all the stuff that happens after, because it's the team that's gotta execute on that, not the consultant. The team has gotta figure out, we gotta put this in a sales deck, we gotta test it with our sales team, then you've got your sales enablement folks are figuring out how to enable the whole team on that. Then we got
Yeah.
marketing's gotta look at this and build messaging on it and da 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 da. This is internal work, this is not external work.
Yeah. And that process is gonna take a long time before you're through
Well,
all
it
this.
depends, right? Like
Yeah.
some companies I work with are super fast. Like, they not too much problem making the decisions beforehand. They already knew it. We do the workshop, and 3 weeks later, they got a sales deck everybody's feeling good about, and they're
Mm.
doing sales training, and the marketing team's working on messaging, and you go look at their homepage a month later, everything looks amazing.
Yeah.
Other teams, it's not that easy, like, especially if the bigger the company is, the harder it is. And
Yeah.
so other teams, it takes a long time to get the deck worked out. Even just looking at the volume of deals you have, it takes a long time to get the deck tested because you're not doing 10 pitches every day. You're doing
Yeah.
a couple of pitches every week. So that's going to take a lot longer to test the deck. It's going to take longer to get everybody enabled on the thing. It's going to whatever. So some folks, that's a months long process to get the positioning actually rolled out.
Yeah, just to cement kind of the motivation for people who haven't worked on positioning before. What is kind of the experience once the position is right, or like it's, let's call it, successful? What is the like things you experience inside the company once you get it?
Yeah. Well, so in the work I do, we never stop at just positioning. We go all the way through to a sales pitch so that we
Yeah.
can test the positioning using a sales pitch. The great thing about doing it that way, other than the fact that I think you get better feedback on the positioning and more relevant feedback on the positioning because you're doing it live with customers.
Yeah.
But the other thing about that is that you can get the sales team working on that new positioning even before you've got marketing rolled out. So
Mm.
usually what we see is an immediate impact on what's happening in these first calls. So, and usually what we're looking for and what you'll see if the positioning was kind of mushy and confusing, and then we get something that's really good, really tight, what we get is way better conversion from first substantive sales call to deal in the pipeline, opportunity in the pipeline.
Yeah.
That's the immediate impact is usually we see it there. If we don't see it there, then I'm worried. that maybe we got positioning that's just okay and it's not positioning that's great. But usually we see it right there. So you have this immediate impact on pipeline if you do it that way, which makes everybody happy and makes everybody feel good that, wow, if we could get that cooking on the front end of this funnel, imagine how great everything would be.
Yeah.
That gets
It's
everyone
like
motivated.
very
Once we get it
practical.
fixed,
You could probably even single out an account executive and say, here's this new deck. Your normal conversion rate is 20% in the sales pipeline. Try for a week or two using this deck and then tell me what's your conversion rate
yeah.
having done that.
Again, if you have high volume of deals, you can look at that data and see it. Now, if you're doing monster deals and we're not
Mm,
doing 100 calls a week, then it's different. But
very true.
but we generally try to test with the best sales reps we've got, so that because the best sales reps you've got have a good feel for what works and doesn't work with the deck that they have right now.
Yeah.
And so if we change the story, they've got really good gut feel on, hey, this is a better story. This is working better. What I see in these meetings
Yeah.
is just way more positive. So if we have that, then, if my best sales rep comes back and says, this deck is good and it's better than the old one, then I can feel pretty confident that, if I can get the rest of the team there, then we're probably pretty good.
Wonderful.
And then when we get this stuff cooking over on the marketing side, so we've got campaigns running that are more relevant. We've got messaging on the homepage or wherever we're doing conversion to leads is more relevant. Then what we get is not just, and here's the thing, it's not necessarily more leads coming through the funnel. It's better leads coming through the funnel because people get what you do.
Yeah.
And so they are self-qualifying in or out earlier before they actually hit that first call.
Yeah.
So what you generally have with weak positioning is you get a lot of garbage comes in because people think you're something you're not.
Yeah.
Or, they think you're this, but it turns out you're this, or they misunderstand what you are. And then they get to first call and they're like, oh yeah, no, this is terrible. And then they drop out. So we don't get great conversion over. When you get this working really well on the marketing side, like ideally you get more leads, but you generally get more and better. Like the
Yeah.
stuff that's coming through is better qualified because it's more understandable what you do. People have more realistic expectations about the value that you're going to deliver. And so you get these better quality deals coming through all the way through. So it's this nice virtuous cycle in
Yeah.
that things are coming in are better, things are progressing faster, fewer people are dropping out. Like the whole thing is just better. It just feels like good positioning feels like magic. It just feels like, oh my gosh, we're rolling down still. Everything's easy. Bad positioning is the opposite of that. It's like everybody hates us. I don't even
Yeah.
know why. Nobody wants to talk to us. Half the calls we have are just crap. And 10
Yeah.
minutes in, we're like, why are we even talking?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, April, we're almost at the end. I wanted to ask you because I'm sure everybody is asking at the moment, kind of how this like AI explosion, this empowerment of all of us to be vibe coders and
Yeah.
generative AI specialists and so what. Kind of how's that kind of what's that doing to the importance of positioning? Because like one day
Yeah.
you can have one product, the next day you can have another if you just kind of prompt the right way. It's just kind of a general curiosity to how you see kind of this explosion in empowerment of all of us that AI
Yeah.
brings along. What does that do to the way companies position, or does it do anything, or should it do anything?
Well, I think it's, to be honest, I think what we're going to see is a couple of things. Like, one, we're going to see in certain markets, not in all markets, but in
Yeah.
certain markets, we're just going to see a proliferation of solutions, right?
Yeah.
Like, you think the landscape is crowded now.
Oh no.
Give it a few years, and we're just going to be all kinds of stuff. Like we're already seeing the low end of that, which is this explosion of apps on the App Store, and
Yeah.
figure out what to do with that. And where I work is more this like enterprise B2B stuff. So I mean, we're not seeing it there yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
will it get there? Yeah, maybe. And if it does, oh man. Like so now what's interesting is you're going to need to figure out how to position against these things that are potentially in-house built
Yeah.
or built to be almost like custom software. Like, it's built to be for you and your particular situation and whatever.
Mm.
So I think companies are gonna, if that happens, companies are gonna have to think about, what are the things that we can offer that are really tricky to vibe code or
Yeah.
really tricky to maintain even after you've vibe coded it, or potentially dangerous in terms of a compliance and security standpoint. And,
Yeah.
how are you going to position against it? So that's one thing. The
Yeah.
second thing is, I think what we're going to see is maybe companies going a little bit nuts, building features just because they can, not because a customer cares.
That's interesting.
Or that it's not gonna it's not necessarily driving revenue. Like, I think the job of product management, I think it's very important
That's very true.
in this
That's very true.
phase, that we need to be able to, like, it's great that we can all, make these things and we can deliver them with lower skill levels and we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
deliver
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
faster. That's amazing. But that means that your road mapping is super important. Like, are we building the right things? Because 'Cause we're just not into the building things business.
No.
We're into building the right things business. So, how do we know we're building the right
That's great.
things?
Yeah.
How do we know that, like, what is our process to close the loop here
Yeah.
on, you know, things that can move the needle on revenue, things that are really driving value for customers versus, "Hey, this is cool. Look at this thing I can just do now," like
Yeah. 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 That's not what we're
I
here
get
for.
the enthusiasm, but I worry a little bit about, we're gonna get these Frankenstein products that eventually you get this big degradation in user experience or whatever, because there's a whole bunch of crap in there that people have added just because it can. Like, let's just
Yeah.
throw it in there and see what people think. And to the point where you've actually messed up the thing that was really great about your product because, you've added a bunch of bump in there that nobody cares about. So I think there's a great future for smart product strategists.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I think product marketing on that side has a lot to contribute there about being kind of the person that understands what's valuable to customers and what's going on in the field right now and where are the opportunities. Like, I think product management, product marketing, I think is more important than ever.
Yeah.
And and I think having some tight positioning right now and a good strategy document that says, here's where we expect to go in the future, and here are the steps. And then being able to take the proposed things that people want to
Yeah.
build and say, does this contribute to this journey or not?
Yeah.
Before we just throw it all out there. So I don't know. I think there's going to be that.
I think that was a great answer to to my somewhat broad question. Thank you so much, April.
No problem.
April, we're done. I know you're a highly productive individual and you release content all over the place. So I'm gonna
I
leave.
do not feel like a highly productive content creator at the moment.
If you
I'm
haven't
really
bought
busy.
the obviously awesome book and you're listening to this podcast, you should buy that book for sure. Where do you want people's attention elsewise besides having a browse of the book?
Well, I did a series of podcasts recently as kind of a companion to the new book, like 6 or 7 episodes that just kind of walk through, here's what's new in the book, and here's, a little bit of depth in my thinking around there. So I think that's a neat place to say
Yeah.
the podcast called Positioning with April Dunford, big surprise. Um, and then I'm also doing a little bit of exploration on this stuff on the blog, which I'm working on a really long blog post about differentiated value right now because
Oh, nice.
I just feel like nobody understands it. And then there's a set of templates that go with the book that you could use if you want to use internal. And I'm working on a new set that are probably going to drop next week. And so if you subscribe to my newsletter, which is on Substack, you'll get the announcement that these new templates are around. You'll get the old templates, but you'll get the announcement that the new templates are coming. Everything like the newsletter, podcast, everything, you can find links for that on my website, which is aprildunford.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, April. And everybody who's been listening to me and April's conversation, either live or afterwards in the podcast, thank you so much for spending the time with me and April. if you do strongly agree or if you strongly disagree with April, make sure you go in and comment online as well, so we can keep the conversation going. Would love that.
We can fight about it online. Yeah.
Absolutely. But April, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you spending the time with us. And people do subscribe to our podcast, because if you like conversations like this, there'll be many more coming out in the future. April, have a great day in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Great. Bye.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.